This was meant to be a video just on speed cameras, but ended up being more than that because I've since discovered, and I want to point out, that the speed cameras are unnecessary. With the technology we've got nowadays, you don't need speed cameras. Fines can be done completely automatically. So watch the rest of the video and see how I propose that. But also point out that that will never happen. And I'll see the reason why shortly. Whilst riding home on my push bike from the men's shed, I noticed this little blue van on the side of the road. So it looked unusual, so I did a U-turn, went back and had a look at it to find out what it was. There we are, doing a U-turn, trying to do a U-turn in the grass. Go back, have a look, see what it is, and you'll see when I get up closer that it's actually a speed camera with all the sign writing on the side of the vehicle, which you can't see from, and the no sign writing on the back. Notice that the signage says it's a road safety camera. I call it a road revenue camera, as I've done previously. This is what I previously wrote some time ago. Road revenue cameras. All governments insist that speed cameras are only for safety. Based on the number of people caught speeding by speeding cameras and the amount collected over a 10-year period ending in 2018, it'll appear that on average more than all drivers, 100%, 70% of them, see below, are driving unsafely. Based on the number of road accidents, I don't believe that speed cameras are only used for safety reasons. Hence, I suggest you contact your local state politician and ask them to change the signage on speed cameras to reflect the reality. And suggested signage for Queensland is that one there. This is the fixed camera that they had in a similar sort of place what that car was. Another one there. All right, that's what it looks like. That's what that one looks like. All right, and another one there, and another one there. I decided to do a Google on speed camera effectiveness in reducing the road toll. And when I put that in, I came up with this, which is Google's AI's overview of the whole thing is, which says research shows that speed cameras are effective in reducing the number of road accidents, injuries and fatalities. Reduced road accidents. A UK study found that the speed cameras reduced fatal accidents by 40% in monitored areas. Wonder what they mean by monitored areas. That's where the speed cameras were, I get the impression. Okay. An Australian study found that areas with speed cameras saw a 35% drop in serious injury accidents. Once again, it says found that areas with speed cameras. Doesn't say anything about areas without speed cameras. Reducing speed. Speed cameras can reduce average speeds by 1 to 15% and the projection of vehicle speeding by 14 to 65%. The proportion of vehicles speeding by 14 to 65%. Wonder what that means. Okay. Reduce crashes. Studies have found that speed cameras can reduce collisions by 5 to 69%, injuries 12 to 65%, and deaths 17 to 71% in the area around the cameras, not in the areas not around the cameras. So either the problem is there's not enough speed cameras, or the people only slow down when they see speed cameras. So a little bit of a summary, it says here, speed cameras are effective because they encourage drivers to slow down and because of the expectation of being caught speeding. The expectation of being caught can lead to a natural tendency to avoid behaviours that could result in punishment. However, it says here, the effectiveness of speed cameras may diminish over time as drivers become accustomed to them. To maintain their effectiveness, cameras need to be monitored and their placement adjusted occasionally. Okay, that says all that. So I was interested in taking this a little bit further. Okay, this one says the latest data shows that cameras don't save lives. So this is a guy written. I'll tell you what his qualifications are at the end of it. All right, but anyway, this guy says the latest road toll figures are out, and clearly speed cameras and other passive enforcement methods are likely to have no effect on reducing the road toll. From June 2023 to May 2024, 1,303 people died on Australian roads, an increase of more than 10% over the equivalent period preceding it. This comes on the back of some of the largest revenues raised by some states around speeding and mobile phone enforcement fines. Bureau of Infrastructure and Transport Research economic figures released today reveal 1,303 people died on Australian roads in the 12 months leading to the 31st of May 24, up from 1,180 the previous year. So that goes on to show and shows the statistics for in Queensland, the Camera Detection Offence Program, CDOP, brought in 465.8 million in revenue last financial year, an increase of nearly 70% on the 274.4 million collected in 2021-22. That's expected to rise to more than 500 million in the current financial year. The huge jump in revenue comes despite an additional 14 deaths on Queensland roads, a 5% increase over the previous year. Then it talks about Victoria and other states, etc. It goes through. At the end of all this, it says, as of 2022, Australia had a road toll of 4.5 per 100,000 people per year, or 4.9 deaths for an estimated 1 million kilometres. Germany, on the other hand, this guy says, which has significant less emphasis on speed and far higher average speed limits, came in at 3.7 deaths per 100,000 people and 4.2 per an estimated 1 billion miles travelled. The federal government allocates around $10 billion a year to state land transport infrastructure funding, yet road deaths keep rising. The question remains, what are taxpayers funding? So interesting, the difference between Australia and Germany. I've been in Germany, I've seen how fast they drive in Germany, and they're much, much better drivers as a consequence of driving fast. One is wondering if the fact that we drive slow, or we've been told that we drive slow and speed is the cause of deaths, is actually in fact causing us to have more deaths. Wonder. To show what's technically possible in terms of recording how fast people or the devices they have on them are moving, I want to show a couple of things here. All right, just get this a bit smaller so it's out of the way. First of all, there's some data that I have accumulated. Before I show the data it's accumulated, I'll show you a program that I use. This program is called Aussie Explorer. It's Aussie Explorer for Android. I've had it for about 15 odd years. Prior to that, I had Aussie Explorer on a PC. And what I did is back in probably 1997, I bought a GPS, Global Positioning System. I went to a boat show in Brisbane, and I actually had them, and I bought it right there and then. It was a couple of $100, $300 or $400. I bought one. I had that one for quite a while, and then I bought another one, and then later on, mobile phones came out, and they had GPS built into them, and then I was actually able to, as I move around nowadays, I always have my GPS software, this Aussie Explorer running, so it actually shows you not only where I've been, but also it records lots and lots of data. And that data I then uploaded to one of my servers, right? And here is the data on the server, right? I've been uploading it since I had a phone since 2011, just to show you what that is. I have a daily track log for each one as the size of each of the track logs. So if I highlight each of these, highlight them all, and then I say more, and I say properties on it, that tells me how much data, 231 megabytes, 231 million characters of information about everywhere I've moved, basically everywhere I've moved since 2001. That includes going on overseas trips, going in boats, riding a push bike, walking, everywhere when I switch on this software and it records it all. However, more recently, I've got a modern car, and that car does exactly the same sort of thing, all right? But not only that, but it sends all that data and all this data I've got here because I use location services in Google. All that data actually gets stored, and if I go to where it is, maps here, all right, you'll see there, that's for me yesterday, a trip that I did from Brisbane Airport and back and went to somewhere, the Logan Library somewhere, and that's all the data that Google are accumulating about me. But you only see those lines when you look at here. You go into the timeline on Google Maps. If I just go back, show you how you get that. All right, you go into your own icon there, and then you go into your timeline. You can get to see some of that information going back in time. And I've got information from that going back since ever I've been using Google Maps. So Google have all this information about lots of people, in fact, thousands of people, if not millions of people around the world. And just by the way, they use that information, for example, on this map here, you can see that the red bits are. The reason that's red is because they know people are going slower than the speed limit or what the average speed is on that road. But what they don't tell you is they also know when you're going faster than the speed limit, but they don't publish that information for various reasons. So governments, though, on the other hand, could get access to that information, and what they could do is then automatically send people speeding infringements as soon as they exceed the speed limit. And when they do exceed the speed limit, right, they can just send them a notice to say you've exceeded the speed limit. Now, probably some people can test that and say it's wrong, but with the data, I've got I've got another program called Oz Explorer for on a PC. I can show you dots where it's recording the data virtually every second, if I wanted to, or even less than a second, and you can see where you were at one point in time and where you were a fraction of a second later. Therefore, the distance covered and the time involved, you calculate the speed. Very, very accurate. All right. However, governments are not going to do that. And the reason they're not going to do that is simply because people would kick up a fuss. People would not be happy with getting a speed infringement because of a device they have, their phone or their car, all right? And I think governments would never do that. And that's simply because of what's called Machiavellian type political system. Machiavellianism, which I can't pronounce, so I'll get Google to pronounce it for me.
Machiavellianism
Has multiple meanings, including a political philosophy and a personality trait. In terms of political philosophy, the political philosophy of Niccolo Machiavelli, an Italian diplomat and author during the Renaissance. Machiavelli's work, The Prince, advised leaders to prioritize the stability of the regime and other ethical concerns, and to use deceit and cunning to achieve their goal. No, if they clamp down on people too much, they make a law, like a law for speeding, they clamp down on people too much, people revolt and they won't obey the law anyway. Something like similar that's happening with tobacco and alcohol at the moment. People actually are breaking the law because it's becoming too expensive to drink and smoke. So eventually it would become too expensive to drive, and it's very difficult not to go over the speed limit at some stops. So imagine you're driving along and you know, even with your cruise control on and all that sort of thing, even with my cruise control on, it goes over the speed limit by 1 kilometre an hour. And therefore, you get for 1 second, you get a fine. But governments will not do that because of this Machiavellian concept of that if you clamp down too much on people, they won't. Then people will revolt. Lots of other information that cars can actually store and make available to whoever, including governments. Here's a list. I can show a list, but also via a program called Talk, you can actually see lots of information that cars have that a lot of people are probably not aware of, especially modern cars. A list I quickly put together of car data that is stored on modern cars that people may not be aware of. There's over 50 items on this list. People may not be aware that their car is actually capable of recording all this information. Searching this whole subject and trying to find out if there's any intention to change laws in relation to governments obtaining data from motor vehicles, I found this article from the National Transport Commission. I'll just move myself out of the way so we can see a bit more of it. It's headed On-Road Enforcement for Automated Vehicles. So I couldn't find anything about changing the laws, but this talks about automated vehicles and what rules need to be changed in relation to Australian laws to do that. So basically, if I go to the contents of it, the objectives are law enforcement access to autonomous vehicle data and related topics, and managing privacy concerns for new data access powers. Unfortunately, this document uses a whole lot of abbreviations and acronyms, making it very difficult to read. Every time I go to read something, I have to go back to these key terms to find out what it's actually saying. The report makes a number of recommendations to government in terms of changing legislation. And the recommendation number 7 reads as that the states and territories adopt new data collection and access powers that allow enforcement officers to collect or access specific ADS, and ADS means automatic driver system, operational data at the roadside and more generally. Notice at the roadside and more generally. In other words, not just when there's been an accident or when you pull somebody over, but also generally. The power should be compatible with data collection requirements under the AVSL, and that means automated vehicles, safety legislation. The NTC, which is this organisation, the National Transport Commission, and states and territories will continue to monitor the international developments, etc. All right, so what they're basically saying here is that they want governments to have more power to actually obtain information that's installed in your car. So even though previously on this video I said governments are not likely to want to have not likely to have a situation where they automatically fine people because of the data that's available in their cars and elsewhere, automatically fine people for going over the speed limit, and they're not likely to do that. They're still probably not likely to do that. However, the recommendations data will be available to governments to be able to do that if they wanted to. In fact, it's already available, but just legally is it going to be available for them to be able to do what they want to do. All this, I found this particular article. I'll just move myself out of the way so you can see it. All right. More than 1 million people die on roads every year, but the man determined to prevent them. The deaths, I think that means. All right. This is a BBC article, and it goes on to describe this particular guy here. If I find him, there he is, and he is proposing, or he isn't proposing. He's done some whole lot of work. He's Swedish, and the Swiss people have the lowest road toll in the world. And this all happened because a number of years ago there were people involved in a car accident, and young people, and they might have been drinking or whatever. They came off a freeway, crashed into a pole, and then after they did that, 5 people in the car all died. And this guy actually comes from a medical background, not a driving or road safety or anything like that background. He comes from a medical background, and he's said to the people when he was in charge of this area, what are we going to do to prevent it? And they said, oh, decrease the speed limit or something, forget what they said. But he said, why not just remove the bowl? So that's what they did. So his argument is that even though the emphasis seems to be put that drivers are the problem, which is probably true. Drivers are the problem. However, even the best of drivers can make mistakes. If you make a mistake once or twice in your lifetime, that could be fatal. So he wants to put things in place that if you do make a mistake, you're less likely to be killed. And some of the things, obviously that are built into cars nowadays, like seat belts, stuff like that, all work into that situation. So he's all about engineering as to how to do it. Here's a little comment. I'll just quickly jump to another screen. But this is named Tingville. But Tingo expressed regret that speed limits are still subject to political and public debate, rather than being set by experts who understand the risk that different road systems pose to the human body. No one would dream of letting the Parliament set the speed limits for trains or maximum load weights for bridges, since they are technical limitations, he wrote in 2002. Regardless of how hard it may sound, democracy does not stand above physical laws. Okay, interesting concept. At the same time, and this is not he's written, but this is written in this article, at the same time speed limit technology is approaching a point of greater life-saving power. All new cars sold in the EU now come with intelligent speed assistance, ISA, as standard. Vehicles identify the speed on a stretch of road and can either cut power if the engine is speeding, or give an audible warning. Drivers can override the function or deactivate it, but their actions will be recorded on a black box type device. So perhaps that's the way to go. Rather than having all these speed fines and speeding cameras and stuff like that, they just use the technology that already exists, and it stops you from speeding. But then there's arguments being put against that at various times. For example, sometimes you need to speed because you've got to get out of the way of something or some such thing like that. Well, obviously, there can be exceptions to rules, so that can be just a summary of everything that I've just covered. I was riding a bike past a speed camera, and was prompted me to do all this. I pointed out where before I'd done a website a web page showing that speed cameras are actually road revenue cameras, not road safety cameras. I noticed also that notices about speed cameras now come from the State Revenue Office, which confirms what I said before. That research shows that cameras reduce fatalities at and around camera sites, but they do not reduce them overall, even though the number of people booked and revenue are increasing dramatically. Germany, despite having in some cases no upper and higher speed limits than Australia, have lower fatality rates. And data currently available re speed camera I showed about the data that's currently available re speed cameras and cars. I asked, should governments have access to that data, and why they should not, and because of Machiavellianism. And data that is stored I've showed the data that's stored in modern cars I talked about on-road enforcement of modern cars and what the legislation is likely to be in the future about that, and what the recommendations are. And I've talked also about alternatives to enforcement. So that's it. Bye.